We are covering breaking news tonight in this Trump impeachment investigation. At this very moment, I can tell you the entire House Democratic Caucus is having a closed-door meeting. This is the first time they've met in weeks. They're returning, of course, to work, and they are discussing explicitly the next steps in the potential impeachment of President Donald Trump. Not only that, but we've just been briefed, what you're seeing on your screen is that within this hour, Speaker Pelosi will come out and speak. We're going to show you that, bring you that. It will be newsworthy given everything that's going on. Her first remarks here from the Congress in 2 weeks. Also breaking, Rudy Giuliani revealing he will defy a House subpoena for Ukraine documents today. And as he ignores that subpoena and reportedly faces this new criminal scrutiny from federal prosecutors in New York, Giuliani has also revealed that at this point in time, he does not have a lawyer of his own. Asked by Politico about it, he said simply, no one is representing him. The legal stakes clearly rising for this lawyer and former prosecutor at the center of the Ukraine scandal. Giuliani has faced a devastating series of revelations from other impeachment witnesses, some of who were the people he was trying to strong-arm for this alleged shadow foreign policy. Today, a diplomat named George Kent testifying behind closed doors, reportedly revealing that he also raised concerns about Giuliani's Ukrainian pressure scheme months ago. This new testimony adds another block here. It adds more incriminating information about what Giuliani was doing. And it comes, of course, just one day after another impeachment witness, another Trump aide in this administration, testified about the pushback from ousted National Security Advisor John Bolton. Now, he, whatever you think of all of his ideology, he is, according to these other impeachment witnesses, on record as trying to get in front and oppose what he viewed as Giuliani's criminal plot. I want to read this, and I want you to let this sink in. This is the new testimony that Bolton apparently said, quote, "I'm not part of whatever drug deal Sondland and Mulvaney are cooking up." This is not Breaking Bad. This is real life. Mr. Bolton, a very accomplished lawyer, in addition to his other training, knew what was going on. He had a view of it. He wanted to warn the White House in no uncertain terms. He viewed this as criminal. And as a lawyer speaking to lawyers and non-lawyers, he called it a drug deal. So he couldn't be misinterpreted, couldn't be misheard. And that's not all. We're learning from this new witness that Mr. Bolton also warned, quote, "Giuliani is a hand grenade who's going to blow everybody up." Bolton reportedly told the witness to report her concerns to not just anybody, but to a top lawyer at the National Security Council, which she reportedly did. What do you have here taken together? It is a very incriminating picture of people who are actively working for Donald Trump, who are most days showing up to work trying to get his agenda enacted, supporting him, getting paid by the government. They're inside the Trump administration. They're inside the White House, and they're the ones blowing the whistle. They're the ones, in various ways, we're learning, trying to say Giuliani is pursuing a, quote, drug deal. Giuliani is a walking hand grenade. This is not normal stuff. This is not normal testimony. And I can tell you something else. By the end of the week, a half a dozen people will have stepped up and testified in this impeachment probe. Democrats saying they're getting critical evidence.
We are learning new and important information in the impeachment inquiry.
Have you heard evidence to this point that would support articles of impeachment against this president?
Yes, Jim, we have.
Solicitation alone is a criminal act. That's what the president did. It is shown right there in the transcript. It's not just a smoking gun, it's the actual bullet.
That is what we're hearing. And then you have this. What you see on your screen is live news. It's going to happen during this hour. Speaker Pelosi, in a late in the day announcement that she is coming forward after her meeting with her own caucus about impeaching Trump and where the road is from here. And she's going to say something from the podium you're looking at, and we will bring it to you. A lot of people interested, some people afraid. I'm joined now by federal prosecutor Gene Rossi. He served for many years at the Department of Justice. Criminal defense attorney Caroline Palisi, who represented Mr. Papadopoulos in the Mueller probe and knows her way around some of these national security and legal issues. And Rutgers professor Brittany Cooper. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Gene?
Yes.
Hand grenade, drug deal, cooking, not your typical congressional testimony, not even your typical testimony in trials that try to prove drug deals. What did you make of the stark language from Mr. Bolton, an Ivy League educated lawyer, among other things?
He nailed that really well. July 10 is going to be almost as important as July 25th, Ari, because John Bolton, whose views I don't always agree with, he had the innate sense to understand that something rotten was occurring in Denmark. And we make fun that it's a drug deal. It wasn't a drug deal. It was a deal involving the president putting his personal interest and his electoral chances over the welfare of the United States of America.
Right. And just to be clear, Gene, and I'll go back to you, I think, and I'm curious your analysis, but I think what Mr. Bolton was trying to do in no uncertain terms, in a world where every time the president asks for foreign collusion, it's later dismissed as a joke, was not have a high-level legal discussion about whether this may or may not violate any technical federal law, but say, look, this is over the line. This is a plot. This is a conspiracy. And drug deal is something anyone can understand is in the White House, gosh, get away from the drug deal they're cooking.
Absolutely. He saw a conspiracy, and a conspiracy allegedly existed among the president, Giuliani, these two other people, Lev and Igor. They sound like characters in Dr. Zhivago. I got to tell you, this case reeks of an impeachable offense. And that congresswoman who just said solicitation is the crime. A quid pro quo, you only need a quid. And he held up $400 million to Ukraine, 10% of their defense budget. And they were pleading with us for help against the Russians. And Trump tried to use it like a carrot.
Brittany, we have sat at this table before and talked about the things Donald Trump does.
Yeah.
And he's criticized for many. I would observe that Donald Trump merits the criticism for many things.
Yes.
But merits impeachment for very few. And I think that's what the founders intended. Many terrible things that politicians can do are not what the founders defined as impeachable. Here we are bumping up against one that the Congress says may indeed be impeachable, that it is not only reprehensible or objectionable or derogatory or discriminatory, but that it is the kind of abuse of power, or as Gene was discussing, bribe, one of the enumerated constitutional offenses for impeachment. Sure. And thinking about that, I want to play for you Rex Tillerson, who's been around the block running an oil company, been up to the line, let's be real. But he said he was getting all kinds of orders to go over the line. Take a look.
When the president would say, well, here's what I want to do, and here's how I want to do it. And I'd have to say to him, well, Mr. President, I understand what you want to do, but you can't do it that way. It violates the law. It violates a treaty. You know, he got really frustrated.
He didn't just get frustrated. He ousts people who don't go along. And what does that say to you about the testimony today, which quotes Mr. Bolton, who also is out?
Yeah, look, what I'm really sitting here thinking is Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty Dumpty back together again.
You know, Brittany, bars, nursery bars.
Look, I've been tight since I was a kid. So, but the other point of this is that it's quite basic. We tell children don't lie. We tell children don't cheat. And we have a president who doesn't have the morality of a 5-year-old and who thinks that it's fine to sort of engage in a shakedown and to basically use the White House and the power of the U.S. presidency to run a crime syndicate and then to essentially try to strong arm anyone who doesn't want to go along. What is more shocking is that most of the men around the president are a cast of shady characters. And at the point that the shady characters start to say, this is too far, then all of us should recognize that our hair is literally on fire at this point and that he has to go. What I appreciate that the Democrats have done in this moment is they have seized on what is a simple narrative. You cannot use foreign interference to win an election. Now, why we didn't know that in 2015, 2016, 2017 is a thing that I'm inclined not to be generous about. He is playing from the same playbook because it worked the last time.
Let me press you on that, though.
Sure.
One difference from 2016 is the evidence we have, and I've read the Mueller report twice, and your client was in it. You know the Mueller report well. The evidence suggested that Russia was coming into the U.S., that they were starting it. Doesn't mean you could get their help, but that's where it started.
Sure.
And one difference that the Democrats are pointing to is now it's the sitting president, and the plot is not coming from Russia. The plot is coming from inside the White House.
Look, I think it's a distinction without a difference.
You do?
But we'll take it, right? This is a man who stood at a podium and said, bring me the emails, hack the emails and bring them to me. He was inviting them to interfere, and we gave him a pass. Now we have seen him be entirely consistent with what he said. He didn't have the U.S.'s best interest at heart when he ran for the presidency. He has continued to ruin our foreign interest around the globe. He's totally engaged right now in a realignment of power that we haven't seen since World War II. And we're going to be paying the price for that for generations. But the thing that I want to say is that the thing we keep learning in this country is that you cannot get in bed with white supremacy without it having global repercussions. The U.S. had to learn this lesson in the 19th century. We had to learn it in the 20th. And apparently we're terrible students, and white folks, I wouldn't even say people of color, but white folks are having to learn it again in the 21st century.
Very interesting, everything you lay out there, including Humpty. And we're not talking Humpty Dance.
The chance to do the hump, always.
You got it.
Shock G, Caroline. Look, here's the deal. This looks pretty serious. As someone who dealt with the Mueller probe, do you see the underlying allegations? Not asking us to resolve them, but do you see the underlying allegations here as more serious than that?
Well, I think, and picking up on some of the stuff that Brittany just said, I think one of the lessons we can learn from sort of having been through the Mueller probe at this point is that we perhaps are looking at this too much in a legal lens if we're thinking about impeachment. The Mueller probe, we were so quick to see if it met the statutory elements of whatever crime that we were trying to figure out.
Let me direct you then.
Yeah.
So if not a legal lens, meaning not, each element, then what is the right lens?
Well, the impeachment lens is inherently political, right? So we can't sit here and say, does it meet the elements to get to whatever 2/3 of the Senate is going to, qualify for removal. So, there's a famous quote that an impeachable offense is really just whatever the Congress thinks it is at that moment in history.
Yeah, but I'm going to push back on you respectfully. That quote could also be said as a conviction is whatever 12 jurors think it is. It's a description of a process, but any Congress that takes this seriously, and in history, the Congresses have taken it seriously, partly explaining why the Senate has never actually removed someone from office under conviction, a high bar, but also agonizingly searching over it. The Congress is supposed to look to the text of the Constitution and say, not a political disagreement, not a criticism of the morality of the individual, but rather a high crime, misdemeanor, treason, or bribery.
Right. And actually, if you look at what the quintessential founding fathers, what they thought quintessentially would constitute a high crime and misdemeanor, this certainly falls way more within that spectrum than any of the other sort of impeachments we've seen in history, which is obviously putting, a personal political interest above the interest of a party. But I think what we're seeing here is a mosaic, really. We're seeing, the whistleblower is almost... you don't need the whistleblower anymore at this point because we've got so much here putting together the pieces of this puzzle.
Well, let me bring in, that's such a great point. Let me bring in Gene back and then back to the New York panel, to the panel here on the set. But Gene, you look at this, Caroline, who knows her way around these probes, is talking about the role of the whistleblower. The original whistleblower, because it's anonymous, because there's much intrigue, has this sort of excitement. But I feel like today, if you imagine there wasn't an original whistleblower, and we just learned that John Bolton, who is aligned with Donald Trump, saw this all as a criminal drug deal being perpetuated by a freelancing wannabe Secretary of State, who he called basically a walking hand grenade, I think that would be even bigger than the original whistleblower description.
I think you're absolutely right. John Bolton would be the classic canary in a coal mine. But I want to address something that Caroline said. I agree it is a political decision to impeach and then to try someone in the Senate, especially the President of the United States. But this is a double-barrel shotgun. You have all the elements beyond a reasonable doubt. In fact, the target, the president, has confessed to bribery, extortion, Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. It's all there. And Exhibit 1 would be the transcript of his call. Exhibit 2 would be his own admission in front of the White House. So it is a political decision. But here we have
let me make a suggestion.
crime.
Let me make a suggestion. when we use this word political, I just think that word has so many meanings, right? It's like saying bad meaning bad or bad meaning good. And at a certain point, it collapses under its own weight. The reference that I think Ms. Pelisi was making is that Gerald Ford famously said, yes, it's whatever the Senate agrees on. I think what you're both referring to is, unlike a jury, it is a political body. It is the Congress that will vote on this. So you could say it's a political decision. You could also say it's a Senate decision. You could also just say legislators will look to their constituents, as they usually do, as they consider this process. But I don't think it's political in the sense of electoral politics. Indeed, there was great antipathy towards George W. Bush politically. He was not ever impeached.
Ari, I think that there's actually a really important point here, too, though, that part of what they mean when they're saying that it's political, as I understand it, is that it's going to be perceived as partisan bias, right? And that the way that we get out of some of that, or the way that we have to think about it, is what kind of story do you tell so that in this highly polarized political moment, folks understand that the stake, that our democracy is at stake here, that this is not actually about the Democrats going after their sort of enemy number one. And I don't think that we've done a good job of narrativizing that, but I also don't know that in this moment,
Who are you talking about?
Democrats. Yeah. I mean, I don't think that the country trusts politicians in general, and I think that the country is deeply polarized. And so the one thing that we do have to do, and I see them trying to say it's not political and it's legal, because when you use that language, and what it means is this is objective. Objectively, this person stood on the White House lawn and said, I did these things. And so this is the battle about whether or not this is going to be perceived as political or legal. And what we need to say is, the truth is the thing that has to stand here. Facts have to lead our decision making. Right. And we know he did these things. He told us he did them. He has left us no other recourse.
Well, and that's, I think, Caroline, what's so interesting, again, having your expertise from representing people in the Mueller probe. The Mueller probe had a lot of different people politically rooting for impeachment. But I think it is a testament to the system, however much people disagree, that it is facts that have moved us closer to impeachment as a country right now. And now, some argued, well, there were enough facts to begin with. But whatever you think happened, I don't think that the resistance dislikes Donald Trump more today than it did a year ago.
Sure,
right?
I mean, hopefully
it's addition of facts.
I mean, hopefully what we don't decide is that we need criminals to confess to their crimes in the public, to the media, in order to think that we can enact these political systems. I think that's a terrible bar.
But I'm making a procedural point, which is, whatever one thinks, people might disagree about getting there.
Sure.
The process has been a process of the addition of facts, not the addition of antipathy towards a politician.
You're right about that.
You know, that's one thing. Let me play Adam Schiff, speaking of facts, saying that they're getting a lot of evidence in these closed sessions. Take a look.
We're doing these initial hearings in closed session, and it makes a lot of sense to do that when you're conducting an investigation, because I'm sure the White House would like nothing more than to be able to get their story straight by hearing what these witnesses have to say. And there are good and important investigative reasons not to let one witness know what another witness has said.
That's exactly right. I mean, it's prosecution 101, right? You want to separate the witnesses so that they can't get their story straight. I think that Fiona Hill's testimony obviously corroborated everything that we've been hearing about, especially, I think, what Gene was referring to, the Igor Furman and the Lev Parnas indictments recently. You know, part of that indictment said that they were working with Giuliani in this sort of shadow or rogue diplomacy to get Yovanovitch out of that position as ambassador to the Ukraine. And Hill corroborated that, and she was a fierce advocate for Yovanovitch, saying that she stood up and said that this isn't right. She did not like what she was seeing, and it's all consistent with the narrative that we've heard about. And so I think that Schiff is right that this is going quite well for them.
And you say that again as someone who's represented Trump advisors, which is interesting.
Yes, it is interesting.
What I'm going to do, because we're waiting on Pelosi, is some of our guests are going to return. We're going to fit in a break. Again, as always, my thanks to an expert panel kicking us off, Gene, Caroline, and Brittany. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.